UKMotorTalk.
Well, hello. Here we are again. After various bits and pieces we'd all been up to, we're back in the room, or the virtual Zoom room. I'm Dave, and with me I have...
Jim, hello. How are you?
Hello, and I'm Graham. How are you all?
And we are UK Motortalk, in case you were wondering. That's the name over the shop anyway, and that's the one we're sticking with for the time being. Yeah, it's good to be back. I've been away. I think others have had various absences, not particularly AWOL, but we've all been on holiday and done various bits and pieces and had other things going on in life. But it's nice to see, well, the majority of the team. Mr. Gates is off playing with diggers, I believe, so at least he's doing something on topic. Graham, I understand you've been off in the Bongo Friendly, using it for the purposes for which it was purchased?
Yeah, we've had a couple of spells in the Bongo, and very enjoyable it was too. We've just been lucky and caught the right weather, but I'm still sort of a bit worried about camping in the really, really wet weather. But Bongo so far seems to be pretty waterproof. All seems to be well, apart from the awning that came with it, which blew itself to pieces on the first weekend we used it, so we've had to replace that with a somewhat less sail-like one that doesn't need nailing to every point of green grass in the county to keep it down.
Oh, it's a minor thing. As long as the thing itself's working and you can get in and out of the field, that's pretty much all you can ask, isn't it? As long as, and not waking up with a lap full of water, I imagine is probably preferable.
Mechanically, it's been fine, and in every other respect, yeah, we're very well pleased with it.
Excellent. We will see it in the metal one day. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I do like a friendly. And Jim, have you been out and about in the Caterham, enjoying the sunny weather that we've been treated to on occasions over the last few weeks?
Yeah, it's been a funny old summer this year, hasn't it? Sort of not consistent, decent weeks and weeks and weeks of, well, fair to middling weather or just lack of rain. It's been a bit hit or miss. But no, we've had a couple of trips out in it this month, so it's been not been too shabby at all. It's more trips than it normally gets in a month, to be fair. But yeah, it's been good. Just working out how long to keep the thing taxed for this year. I think I kept it taxed all the way till November last year, actually. So somebody had promised us an Indian summer, so who knows? Maybe I'll keep it going until December this year, or just go out and about on Christmas Day on it. Why not?
Well, that's what it's all about, isn't it? If you're not out and about with a woolly hat and a scarf and a great big flying jacket, then you're not really getting your money's worth, are you? I seem to remember even with the Barchetta, I used to have people on the forums going, I saw you out in your Barchetta and I didn't see the roof down. It was minus 30 degrees. Doesn't mean anything. You've got a heater. So, I mean, I'm sure the same thing applies especially to Caterham owners, does it not?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I've put the roof on mine once when I had to take it back to have a little niggle sorted under the warranty a few weeks after I bought it. The forecast was for rain, so I spent a little while working out how to put the roof on the night before and tucked it all away with the roof on so I could get going in the morning. And but yeah, then rolled the roof up and tucked it over the top of the garage door, and that's where it stayed ever since. So I've not driven it in the rain since, but I've not put the roof up since. And to be honest, just keep going, and as long as you're doing over sort of 20 miles an hour, you're probably okay. But it was a bit like in my time at Lotus. If it was a convertible in Exige or whatever, the roof went down. That's it. If it wasn't raining, the roof came down. Didn't matter how cold it was. I'd be out and about on days where it was snowing. And as long as the snow was fairly dry and crisp, I'd get the roof down, because like you say, you've got a heater, put the heater on full bore and a pair of gloves and a jacket, and off you go, and that's it. Get on with it.
I'm entranced by the idea that even the possibility that an Italian installed heating device in a car would be capable of dealing with anything lower than about 65 centigrade.
You'd be surprised, actually. It did work surprisingly well. It was one of, well, I say that, I qualify that. The heater bit worked quite well, but it was one of the very few that they ever made that had the air conditioning system, which you think wouldn't be much use in a convertible, but believe it or not, it was, because you could point the vents backwards and it would clear the plastic rear screen pretty well. And the thing did steam up a fair bit, especially when the hood started leaking and it got cold and wet inside. But yes, the heater did actually work quite well. I have a strange suspicion that bit may have been sourced from somewhere like Germany, which would explain it.
It would explain it.
It would. But yeah, it was good fun. I keep thinking I'd quite like another one. I'm looking around at the possibility of having a fun car, getting rid of the Skoda and getting something. A Golf GTI convertible, one of the Mark 1s, is on my list. I think I mentioned before. It's probably marginally more practical and a bit more likely to remain working than the Barchetta, but I don't know. It's pipe dreams and early days, but still looking around.
I was following earlier today a Passat, which had been clearly heavily breathed on. And I couldn't believe how wide this guy had got the Passat. It was like following a tractor. He was just enormous in the beam. So certainly I don't think he would have come unstuck too easily. It was, God knows what size tyres he'd got on there, but clearly he'd extended the bodywork as well over the much wider tyres. It was actually a very pretty car.
Interesting. The Carlos Fandango wide wheel set. Older viewers and listeners will remember the Carlos Fandango wide wheel set, courtesy of a cigar manufacturer, wasn't it? Which one was it? Which
was it? Hamlet.
Hamlet. That's it. Hamlet. God, I should know. Happiness is a car called Hamlet. Are we advertising? No, we're not advertising. We're not breaking any rules.
I'll say, yeah, that's dangerously close to advertising. We'll have to put a warning or something like that on the podcast, won't we? We are a replica designed for show use only and not a toy or something. There's one thing, speaking of tobacco advertising, I did see, and I was really happy to see it, the motor show was a couple of old Scalextric cars with Marlboro and JPS advertising all over them. I thought, oh, actually, that's quite nice, because at least the kids of today will get to know the beauty of a tobacco.
Even if they don't partake. Those were the days. Yes, the motor show. I forgot. Yes, of course you all went to the motor show, or most of you went to the motor show. It looked like a lot of fun. I'm thinking of going for the electric one later in the year, because my friend Callum, who's a bit of a hippie and likes electric things, will be going. So I'll be interested to get his perspective on certain things and him telling me off for liking internal combustion engines. Looking at some news this week, I understand that there's a very expensive Mercedes-Benz coming up for sale.
Well, it just caught my eye that Sotheby's are hoping to sell one of the most expensive cars in the world. At least that's what they hope it will be. And they're predicting an auction total of $55 million for a W196. Now, actually, I thought it was
they've invited you along to chuck your hat in the ring, have they, Graham?
Well, I will be keeping my hands firmly in my pocket. No, it's interestingly, the car has been based in the States for many years. It's not the one that I thought it was, which is another story I'll tell in a moment. But this particular one was gifted by Mercedes to the Indianapolis Speedway Museum, who seem to be rationalizing their stock. But interestingly, it's coming up in the auction which Sotheby's are doing in Stuttgart later in the year. But $55 million is what they're reckoning for it. It has excellent provenance, driven by Fangio, and one of, I think, only 3 or 4 still in existence. The one that I saw was in 2013. Bonhams sold another Fangio W196, and they sold that for what is still, I think, the highest price at auction in this country, $19.6 million. But I had a chance to talk to Robert Brooks, the chairman of Bonhams, before the sale, and to talk to Sterling Moss, both of them dearly departed, I'm afraid, but Sterling was a bit less than complimentary about the condition that the car had been kept in. He'd not driven that particular one, but he'd driven the sister car, because obviously he was a Mercedes Formula One driver and partnered Fangio, who he still rated as the very best of all.
From the archive, Goodwood Festival of Speed, 2013.
And I'm speaking to Robert Brooks, chairman of Bonhams. I have to say, I mean, we've been here 20 years, Festival of Speed 20 years, founding sponsors, also your 20th year. You've had some spectacular sales over the 2 decades. This may well prove to be the biggest of all.
Well, I hope so. Of course, I remember the very first sale we had here when we sold Anthony Mayman's unbelievable collection of historic racing cars, including his ERA R4D and a whole host of wonderful Maseratis and Ferraris and what have you. And you know, the great thing about Goodwood is that it continues to attract the very, very best cars to the very, very best potential buyers. And we've, again, today got a great lineup of cars, and what's even more exciting is we've got buyers from 4 continents, both here in person, linked up with telephones, live on the internet. You know, the world moves on, but plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. We've still got great cars and hope to get big prices.
You've set record after record for auctions over the years, some really spectacular cars, but this one is unique.
Well, having the W196 Mercedes in particular, but let's not forget the great 300S Maserati and many of the other cars here. But having the W196 is a sort of peak moment to the extent that there is only one that's out of captivity. It is the best of all the W196s, and that car in particular dominated Grand Prix motor racing for two key moments in history, in 1954 and 55, and immediately following its ultimate domination in 55, Mercedes withdrew from motor racing on the basis of, listen, we've done it all, we've won everything, we've got nothing left to prove. So there's a big argument that says this is the most important Grand Prix car of all time, and here it is at Bonhams, at Goodwood, and we're going to sell it this afternoon.
Greatest car, greatest driver, one of the races certainly is regarded as one of the best races ever run, and we're looking at some very, very serious numbers over the year.
Well, who knows? Our estimate at the moment is still feet on the ground. I'm still quoting between 7 and 10 million sterling, so let's see where we are. And if it makes over 5.5 million sterling, it breaks the British record as the most valuable car ever sold in this country, which amusingly is a price I achieved for a Bugatti Royale way back in the 1980s. So it's been around for a while.
Well, I gather you've pulled rank on this, and I know Malcolm's doing the behind us at the very moment. He's started off the day, but you're going to take the big one.
Yeah, I don't often elbow the boys out of the way, but I like to take as many sales as I can. I've been selling since I was 19, so I'm looking forward to the auction this afternoon.
Well, we're planning to come back and cover it live a little bit later. Thank you for your time, Robert. Enjoy this afternoon. We'll be watching you.
Thanks so much.
Well, we're back in the Bonhams auction, and one of the most important cars I think they've ever sold, and possibly the highest value car they've ever sold. Oh well, who better to talk to about that car than a man who is a legend, who has won so many races, who drove, if not that car, a sister car in period alongside his teammate, the driver of that car, Juan Manuel Fangio, Sir Sterling Moss. You were a teammate of his for quite some time. You got along really well.
Oh, yeah, terrific. I mean, incredible man. I mean, certainly the fastest Formula One driver in the world, and but also a charming guy. I couldn't speak to him much because I make do with some sort of Italian. He obviously makes do with some sort of Italian as well, because I think he probably speaks Portuguese or something. No, I think actually Italian, but nevertheless still a great man. And this car that's coming up really interests me because I don't think I can ever remember seeing such a beautiful car so abused. I mean, that it should be in this state is staggering to me, really.
It's been as I understand it, been in a private collection for something like 3 decades, and doesn't seem to have had anything done to it that's enhanced it in any way.
I mean, frankly, I was appalled to see it. I really was. It's cruelty, I mean, here's the most beautiful, most fantastic Grand Prix car in the world, probably of any at that time, and here it is, coming up for sale in this dreadful condition. I'm really interested to see how much confidence the buyers have in what they can do with it.
I'm told there are buyers queuing up for it.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
You didn't drive the car in that year. You drove the following year's car, I think.
Oh, is this a 54?
This is a 54.
Ah, right.
But I understand there's very, very little difference between them.
Very, very little difference. I mean, frankly, I don't think I'd have noticed the difference one to the other. Yeah. So I obviously know a car that's so similar to this one, and they really were a tremendous car.
I mean, they were like perhaps a rocket in a turboprop age. They were so far ahead of anything. I mean, they did you very well with the 55 British Grand Prix.
Oh, they're fantastic. I mean, I happened to win the British Grand Prix, but also their sports cars. The SLR was the most incredible sports car ever built, I reckon. And to see this car in this condition on sale is extraordinary to me.
What do you remember of driving this car? What are the features that really stuck in your memory? I know you used to follow Fangio so closely. They called you the train.
That's right, they did. Well, I mean, the cars are really, they're not that easy to drive. In truth, they're not that easy because you've got a varying, not wheelbase, the other thing, but the track, exactly, because obviously the wheels at the back. But they were outside of in the wet when they're a bit trickier. they were a tremendous car. I mean, the one thing, when you got into a Merc, the one thing you knew, and that was that you're probably going to finish, because they were really so strong, and they had the gearbox, everything. I mean, the gearbox was tricky because it was back to front, but I mean, everything about it was a winner.
You were working under Neubauer, who is very much a legend in his own time as a team boss. Tough man to work with, though.
Oh no, I mean, Neubauer's fantastic. I mean, he really looked after his drivers very well, and he would also, when we go on the 24-hour tests, he'd make sure that Carl Kling and Hans Hermann did the worst times, and when Fangio and I were allowed to go, the day before, and they'd go through the night and all this. But just a great man, he really was.
Well, the car's coming up, as I understand, in the next 5 or 10 minutes. Are you going to come to the sale?
Oh, absolutely.
Good.
Oh, so long as I can get in through the mob, I'm going to be there watching.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 1954 Mercedes-Benz W196 R. There it is, lot 320, now being shown. Where would you like to start it, ladies and gentlemen? Somebody start me. £3,500,000. £3,500,000. I'm bid, thank you. £3,500,000. I have the bid at £3,500,000. £3,800,000. £4 million's the bid with me at £4 million. At £4 million, and I can sell it. £500,000. £4,500,000. Bid here. At £5 million, I'm bid. £5 million. They're out here at £500,000. New bidder at £5,500,000. £16 million. Bid in the front. Against the bank of telephones at £16 million. Is there any advance? At £16 million. Well, it's fair warning, ladies and gentlemen, at £16 million. Is there any advance? Any more? 16 million. At £16 million then, fair warning. Last chance, ladies and gentlemen, £16 million. At 16 million. Elena? 16,500,000. New bidder. £16,500,000. £17 million. £17 million. £17,500,000. £17,500,000. We're out. Is that 18? 17,500,000 is the bid. At 17,500,000. Can you assure me, gentlemen, on my left, you are out? 17,500,000. Are you out, James? You out, gentlemen? Matthew? 17,500,000. The bid's on my telephone on the right. 17,500,000. A new world auction record price at Bonhams. 17,500,000.
What did you think of that extraordinary price?
Well, it's extraordinary, but it didn't fetch as much as the GTO Ferrari, did it?
No.
So I'm staggered at how much that was. But this looks such a terrible car. They put it in a dreadful condition.
Where would your guess be that it's gone?
Now, I don't know. What interests me is, are they going to put it back the way it should be, or keep it in this crappy condition? Hopefully they'll put it back into as it was. Yeah, I hope so. I hope so, because this is a great car, one of the greatest cars ever in the world, and for it to not be heralded that way and shown that way, I think it would be awful.
Well, one stage, Goodwood got hold of the Streamliner, which was the fully enclosed one, and Fangio absolutely hated it and persuaded Mercedes to drop it, I think, after 2 races, because he couldn't see where the wheels were going, so he couldn't hit any of his marks, his usual marks.
Couldn't work his magic.
Do we know when and where the auction is taking place? I think we should go along.
Well, if you can get them to pay you to go to Germany, yes, it's in, I think, the Mercedes Museum in Stuttgart.
Well, I think if we get a couple of cheap flights over there, then, because let's face it, we could probably go along, and when the bidding gets to like 28, 29 million, just put your hand up just for a giggle, because somebody will outbid you, and then, like, it just makes you look a little bit baller if you bid 30 million and then duck out. The only problem is going to be if we bid 30 million and nobody else bids against us, but I'm sure we could finance 30 million somehow, couldn't we?
Well, I don't know, you can run, can't you?
I was going to say, well, surely we could get some sort of PCP finance deal. I mean, the residual value of that, what was the list price new, and then what's it worth now? Surely the monthly payments would be negative. Somebody would pay us to own the car. It's a no-brainer. How can we lose? There we are. That's it.
Yeah, good luck arguing that one.
Maybe
we'll be fine. We'll be fine. Don't you worry. I'm sure the residuals on that are stronger than most of the cars that will be at the EV motor show later on in the year.
Having witnessed the sale of the 54, I've always been interested in auctions. Not that I can afford to buy anything, but when you see the high rollers playing for very high stakes, it's always interesting to see. But the art of the auctioneer, because I remember that auction really paused for a long time at about 11 million. And Robert, who I knew very well, was a very, very good auctioneer. I think, as he said, he'd been doing it since he was a teenager. Having it pausing because there were no takers at all at that stage, he just kept going, and he kept extolling the virtues of the car and its history and so on. And suddenly it took off again. So to go from 11 to 19.6 million, I think he was pretty satisfied afterwards.
Sure, the commission would have been more than just reward for his efforts, wouldn't it?
I know these people, they do it because they love what they do. It's it's a very lucrative business to be in if you're playing at the very top, like the Bonhams and the Sotherbys and RM and all that sort of thing. It's another world, but sitting and watching these things go for the eye-watering sums that they do go for. I mean, this thing's up for, we're saying, about 55 million pounds, which is $70 million or something, probably
something of that sort of order.
Yeah, I mean, that could buy you an awful lot of other things.
Something that always struck me, I remember sitting behind Dr. Ewart Luhmann, who owns the National Dutch Collection. Very, very interesting man. And he bought, I can't remember the artist's name now, but he bought a very, very good Formula One painting. And I said to him, did you really expect to pay that much for it? He said, well, it just seemed such a bargain. This is £500,000 for what was a very good painting and a very large painting.
But he wants to be for £500,000, doesn't it?
Seemed such a bargain.
On the subject of money, Mercedes and such like, I understand that Mercedes, the Formula One team of today, has not had such a good weekend of it. Other people at the front of the grid, and Mercedes way down the pecking order.
Well, yeah, it's been quite an interesting season, I think. So even if some of the races themselves haven't been the most engaging or riveting, I think Zandvoort at the weekend being a prime example. The story behind the race and the return after the summer break, etc., was probably a bit more interesting than the actual race itself. I think if that was the last race before the summer break, there would have certainly been less excitement over it and everybody would have been happy for the summer break. But no, we returned to racing, and it was, Lando Norris yet again, or for the second time this year anyway, winning a race. And the championship from drivers and constructors championship point of view seems to have come alive, really. I think the Red Bull, their lead's down to, I think without looking it up, it's less 30 points or thereabouts now, and given the rate at which McLaren seem to be eating into it, scoring 1-2s, 1-3s, 1-4s, 2-3s, and Red Bull, okay, Max Verstappen seems to do okay, he's always there or thereabouts, but Perez has been way down the order. So I think we're looking at more than likely, I would say, McLaren Constructors' Championship. They look odds on to me, and but actually Lando, he closed up only by 8 points. He Max finished second at the weekend, Lando took the win, so there's 7 points. But the fact that Lando won by 20 something seconds and managed to do the fastest lap of the race on the last lap on very old, very worn hard tyres shows just how much he had in hand. So everything McLaren seem to have bolted onto their car this season seems to have done the job rather well. And yeah, they're cantering away. So I think it's going to be close. I think there's Mercedes have had a couple of wins. Well, I mean, Belgium and, George got stripped to the win, but then it ended up falling to Lewis anyway, so still a Mercedes win. That pecking order is, between first and, seventh, it seems to be quite variable. Perez seems fairly well rooted in eighth most of the time, if he even does that well, but it's between Ferrari and Mercedes. It's almost like you're just swapping the liveries on both cars between qualifying and the race. One does well in qualifying, one does well in the race, one does well one race weekend, one does appallingly. Ferrari swing from Monaco to Canada, very different circuits, but all the cars this year and all the cars in this set of rules seem just on such a knife edge or a narrow window with setup and getting the cars to work. But what I think McLaren have done this year is just widen that window and got it wider and wider and wider, so the car now works more circuits in more conditions than any other car seems to, and that's doing them rather well.
I think that 20 seconds gap is really quite extraordinary. We've got so used to Max just rushing off into the distance, first corner, and away he goes. And, that's sort of typical that Max would have that lead over the rest of the field. And suddenly that's all reversed, and he's 20 odd seconds behind Lando. I find that quite extraordinary and absolutely delightful.
Let's be British and biased about this. It's just great to see Lando winning, isn't it? Because it's it's just great to see. So, but like I said, 70. I think he's down to 70 points now with 9 or 10 races left. So it's more than possible if he just keeps chipping away. Although I think it's something like if Lando wins every race and Max finishes second in every race, I think there'll be 3 points in it come the end of the year. Not sure. I think that doesn't include fastest lap, so that could swing it. But let's just hope the McLaren team orders of earlier in the season don't come back to bite them for the sake of one place or two and a couple of points. There be a championship.
I suspect that they will rue the day that they did that when they get closer to the end of the championship, because while it was fair and possibly appropriate at the time, there is no fairness when it comes down to points at the end of the season. If you lose the Drivers' Championship by that margin, that would be very, very sad for the sport.
Yeah, and I think it's, I know the teams, obviously, if it's whether your drivers are first, second, third, fourth, fifth, 19th and 20th, which order they finish in doesn't matter to the team. And the Constructors' Championship is the one that pays the team the money. But if it's a difference between winning a Drivers' Championship or not, I think most teams do care. And somebody like Zach Brown as a through-and-through racer, I think he will care, because if your drivers are finishing first or second and fourth in the championship, let's say, well, surely you want them to finish first and fourth rather than second and fourth, regardless of the Constructors' Championship result. So we shall see. But having said that, the flip side of it is, well, you need to beat everyone, and fair was fair, and he got the better strategy to avoid the undercut at the time, as opposed to the rules of engagement, which was the lead driver gets the preferential call on strategy. So we shall see. But I think Lando's got the rest of the season to show his class and show his worth. So I think he's head down, and I think I might chuck a couple of quid on him, because I think it only takes a couple of bad weekends for Max and the pendulum well and truly swings. Looking into a few bits, I think Max has used up a bit more of his engine allocation or power unit component allocation, or whatever you want to call it, than Lando has. So I think there's potentially some grid penalties or unreliability coming Max's way. So we shall see. But yeah, I think it's shaping up to be a good rest of the season with some good swings. So I think we're off to Monza next, so that should be always a good event, but I think possibly not too good for Ferrari. I think the last long straights and lots of chicanes type track was Canada, and they didn't really go too well there. But fingers crossed they can go a bit better this weekend.
Yeah, damn shame that if they don't do well at Monza. The Tifosi are certainly out in force. They should do well, but it was nice to see both Leclerc and Sainz do better at this last race.
Yeah, surprisingly better in the race, although they don't know why, do they? That was kind of these sort of guys. That was a nice surprise. What am I doing here? Oh, well, we better work out why we did well and try and do more of that.
I'm still interested to see. I watched the interview with James Bowles from Williams about Sainz joining them. And, there's a lot gone into that other than just money. So I have no doubt there is a lot of money as well, because there's a lot of money must be going into Williams to develop a car that will attract Carlos Sainz. So he's seen the future, or he's been shown the future.
Yes, well, as one comes, another one goes. And it's quite opposite there that someone who didn't have a very good weekend and a Williams driver, though Williams driver no more, Logan Sargent, he managed to, whereas McLaren were bolting things on that worked and made a hell of a difference, everything they bolted on Logan's car came off quite dramatically, didn't they? Which I think could very well have led to him no longer being required for the rest of the season.
It's a shame, isn't it? The news today's been replaced by Colapinto, who I don't know a huge amount about, I must admit. But I think Sargent's time had to come, to be honest. I think when it's, as you say, a weekend of lots of new upgraded shiny bits, albeit a fraction of a millimetre too large, according to the stewards, which was certainly irritating for Albon, as he was dumped to the back of the grid, having failed the scrutineering. But I think it was apparently nothing that a quick rub down with a bit of sandpaper didn't sort. I forget whether the measurement was 3 millimetres or 0.3 of a millimetre. I think it was that fine a margin there. A certain area of their floor was too big, but rules is rules. A measurement is a measurement, as a weight measurement is a weight measurement. A number is a very definitive thing. It's either correct or it's not. And in the case of Williams, it wasn't. But yeah, he ripped all four corners off the upgraded car in quite spectacular fashion. And there's, I don't know, a good few £100,000, if not £1 million worth of damage there. And of course, that's money you can't spend on upgrades and whatever else. So I think he's had a fair crack of the whip, though, Logan Sargent. I think he's had a season and a half to prove himself and not quite cut the mustard, has he? So, I mean, whether Colapinto will do any better or not, I'm not sure, but they say he can't do any worse.
He sort of binned his departure bonus, I suspect, if there was a buyout element on his contract.
No, we'll see how Colapinto gets on. I suppose if you're going to get dropped into a track for your first weekend, is Monza an easier track to learn? I don't know. It's got fewer braking points you have to remember, I suppose, and the quick corners and the slow corners, you have to guess at them less. But I think any driver of that level can learn the track in about 3 laps anyway. But he'll know the track inside and out from his junior Formula days anyway. So, but is it just the fewer corners a slightly easier track to master? I don't know. We saw Nick De Vries do rather well when he was dropped in at short notice for Albon a couple of years ago. So maybe that will be a good foreshadowing if you're going to get dropped into a Williams anywhere at short notice. Well, Monza seems to be the track to do it. But I've got a lot of time for James Vowles. I think he's shaping up to be a cracking team principal. A sound, reasonable, calm voice, and takes it on the chin when the team doesn't do well, and is very open and honest and a great communicator. But I think it's not a decision that'll have come easy, I think, but enough's enough after a little while, isn't it? But
I was just thinking back actually to the unfortunate Mr. Sargent there, who managed to decompose the car quite dramatically, and what he hadn't wiped off the side then caught fire. Back in the old days, he'd have just jogged back to the pits and picked up the spare, wouldn't he? But those days are long gone. Happy days.
Although I think, to be fair, if that was the case with Williams this year, bearing in mind Albon did that and they had to give Albon Sargent's car, I think if it had got back and the T car was there, I think they'd have just shut the door and said, no, sorry. Well, no, you've got the T car in there. No, we haven't.
It won't start. There's something wrong with it.
Yeah, undo one of the spark plugs. Oh, no, it won't start. Sorry, you're bench for this week.
Take the rotor arm out.
Yeah. Like I say, it's a shame, but it's one of those. It's the pinnacle of motorsport. There's only room for the 19 best drivers in the world and one other, as the case normally seems to be, and in this case, he was the one other. So yeah, we'll see how Colapinto gets on. I think there's some rumour of Mick Schumacher replacing him for the rest of the season. I don't know. I think Logan Sargent's had a year and a half of crashing a little bit too often and not being that quick, and don't know, lovely chap though he was, Mick Schumacher, I think had a reputation for being not earth-shatteringly quick and crashing reasonably often. So I'm not sure replacing Sargent with Schumacher would have been a step forward. But although it's one of those, I don't think Mick Schumacher was given a fair crack of the whip, and the circumstances weren't the best. So it'd be nice to see Mick make his way back to F1, possibly with a more, I don't want to say cosseting team, but a more nurturing,
supportive
team. More supportive environment, and maybe he'll flourish. We do see this reasonably often with different drivers over the years, don't we? You get drivers who are haven't shown a huge amount of promise in the junior formula and then all of a sudden step up to Formula One and just take off and go from strength to strength. But they're with one team and they do very well, go to another team they don't do as well, or they look average at one team and go to another team and look phenomenal. So it's good luck to Colapinto and good luck to Sargent as well, wherever he finds himself in the world. 'Cause I don't think his racing career is over, and Williams have said they'll support him in finding the next step, whatever that happens to be. So maybe he'll pop up in IndyCar or something like that, because it's I think the speed was there, it just didn't quite click for whatever reason, did it?
I'll be glad to see Williams come back to the fore. I mean, we're seeing the resurgence of McLaren, who, let's face it, have had more success more recently, but it'd be lovely to see Frank's old team back at the front, dueling with the Ferraris and the McLarens, some of the old names back again.
I was going to say that if we went back to Williams and McLaren duking it out for championships, that would be quite nice to see, wouldn't it? I quite agree. I was saying drop throwing them, and it's certainly shaping up for a cracking second half of the season, and a good year next year, and a good year the year after that as well. But yeah, fingers crossed for Williams, because they are heading in the right direction, having paid a visit to being lucky enough to be invited up, as it happened, to the factory not that long ago. They're putting the right things in place, and it's a wonderful group of people up there. So good luck to them.
Yeah. We spoke earlier on about the fact we've all been off doing various things. I spent a couple of weeks out in Canada back last month, which was rather pleasant. And as anyone who'll know who's driven on the other side of the Atlantic, the distances are a little bit more to behold than they are just pottering around in Britain. And I think we clocked up the best part of 2,000 miles going between Quebec and Niagara Falls at either end of the scale. But it was lovely being back over there. I haven't driven over there for 20 odd years when we were last in Canada. And we ended up being given a bog standard, albeit still fairly well loaded for a bog standard thing. It had steel wheels, which I think meant it was bog standard. We had a RAV4, locally produced, I believe, and it was quite nice, actually. Did a lot of miles on it, point and go, had all the toys, all the radar cruise. So God only knows what the top of the range one's got, that this thing seemed to have everything, but steel wheels, still had steel wheels. But we had a good time. And relating back to the Formula One, as we were talking about earlier, we did end up within spitting distance of the circuit de Gilles Villeneuve on the island in Montreal.
The Ile de Notre Dame, in the St. Lawrence Seaway, which I can still hear in Murray Walker's voice.
Indeed. There it is. There they go.
Every time we go to Hungary, I just hear in my voice the Hungaroring. It's like you just can't help but hear it in Murray's voice, can you?
That's it, yeah. He'll be there forever. He lives on in our memories, doesn't he? Yeah, we didn't quite end up on the Ile de Notre Dame, but we were on the next one over, which has got all the Expo 67 stuff on it, which has got the big geodesic dome that you can see, and the big wheel as well, which I think you can see quite prominently on the Canadian Grand Prix. That was quite cool. Yeah, amazing place. Those islands are all man-made, They were all made for the Expo 67, and it's a lovely walk along there. You can have a wander back, you can just about see the back of the stands, which are always there on the circuit. But that was about as close as we got, unfortunately. So any other driving we did was far more lower paced. Having said that, and on a comparison with British conditions, everyone over there seems to know how to drive. There's lots of roadworks, which is no different. I was half expecting it to be this utopian place that we experienced 20 years ago. I think I was maybe sort of looking through the old rose-tinted specs. There was quite a lot of traffic, particularly around Toronto, where they're doing endless and interminable roadworks. And our cab driver who took us from the airport to the hotel this has been going on for months, and it's going to keep going on for months, and everyone's fed up with it. But so it's nice to know we're not the only ones. Potholes, on the other hand, didn't notice too many, but when there were potholes, they were right in the middle of very fast carriageways. So that was a little bit disconcerting.
We've started getting potholes on various sections of motorways now, which is a tad irritating. But at least in Canada, they've got a reasonable excuse for it, because whereas we get a tiny, south of England and south of the Downs, we get hardly any, but we get a bit of a flurry of snow in this country and everything grinds to a halt. In Canada, they get a bit more snow than us, don't they? It would be fair to say. And when I say a bit more, it's if you're measuring it in terms of sort of how many stories high the building is that would be engulfed by the snow. It covers a few more stories than it would do in this country. So it's they get proper snow out there, don't they? But they all seem to get on with it. So,
well, indeed. I mean, last time we were there in January, and at points it was minus 30 something, and Niagara Falls was frozen. So,
that's brisk.
Yes, it was. Well, it wasn't quite for. I mean, I'm perhaps overdoing it there. It was basically like a massive slush puppy going down into what looked like a freezer whose door had been left open. It was, meters thick at the bottom. No made of the mist possible. It was you'd have needed an icebreaker down there. But it was lovely going back and seeing it. Basically, everyone over there seems to know how to drive. Everyone gives way. Nobody hogs lanes. Even though technically you can do the passing in any lane you want, they all sort of are very Canadian about it and go, oh, no, I'm going to move back in here, let you pass. It was lovely. Very nice experience. I quite enjoyed myself over there. It was a lot of driving, and again, you forget the distances. When you're sort of just pottering around Britain as we do, we think we're going miles and miles by driving up to sort of Yorkshire. I was like, oh, that was an epic drive with that. The Canadians go, that was me just going down to the local shops, eh? It's another world. It was great. Really, really enjoyed it. I might write something up for the website if I can. Remember how to write. It's been a while. Yeah, highly recommend it. If you do go to Canada, do a fly drive and use the roads and get yourself a car, because there's so much to see and you have so much more opportunity for getting off the beaten track and seeing what is the most beautiful country.
Well, I think everything's a lot more spread out there. Is the traffic less? So if you are doing a journey from one end of the country to the other, the number of cars you see is far, far fewer, isn't it? So although the distance is higher, because you're in this country, if you drive from, I don't know, let's say here to Corby, Leicester, somewhere in the Midlands, wherever, you'll have, it's a 70 mile an hour stretch basically all the way, because it should be as soon as I get onto the A24, it's 70 miles an hour, and the M25 is 70 miles an hour, and in theory the M1 all the way up is 70 miles an hour, but you rarely do 70 miles an hour, do you? So what should be a 70 mile an hour, 3 hours will get over 200 miles out of the way. That ends up taking actually over 4 hours, because everywhere's a 50 limit, or there's a congestion, or there's 40 mile an hour speed limits, and this and that and the other. It's just the hold-ups and the lack of consistent speed, I think, in this country is the problem. So if it all flows a lot easier, then actually, I'm sure you could drive from here to Edinburgh in not many hours without feeling too knackered. But when you've got to do the whole thing at 42 miles an hour, it gets a bit dreary, doesn't it?
Yes, as I say, I mean, Canada is not devoid of roadworks. There were actually quite a few, particularly as we got up into Quebec, surprisingly or unsurprisingly. I don't know whether it's surprising or not, but it seemed to be more the further north we went, lots of contraflows, but it kept moving. I mean, the speed limits were lower, but everyone kept going. There was nobody driving up your backside. Everyone just basically got on with it. And there was, as you say quite rightly, plenty of room for manoeuvre, which makes it all the more easy to get along with. And we spotted some quite interesting things. I think I may have sort of shared, we saw an immaculate MGB services. Again, that was sort of somewhere up towards Montreal, I think. It was absolutely beautiful. It was British Racing green, top down, and it sounded epic, as well as it sort of pulled out of the services to get back on the autoroute, I think it would have been called, that side of the French-Canadian border. That's the other thing as well. When you go somewhere so different like that, is playing car spotting and spotting the cars we don't get here and vice versa. But Canada, interestingly, in America, there's the 25-year rule where over 25 years old, you can import pretty much whatever you like. As it's the rules are quite strict in the States as to what you can and can't bring in. Canada, it's only 10 years. So there was some quite interesting stuff knocking around that we saw. Believe it or not, quite a few mid-90s GTV, the Spider and the Coupe. A couple of those knocking around, but mostly it was right-hand drive JDM stuff. So there was a lot of Civic, a lot of Integras, but the Japanese spec ones, the Type R rather than the sort of the Bogo ones they used to get. They do seem to go for the JDM stuff in Canada. It's quite interesting. Yeah, it was very interesting. Very interesting to have a look at the stuff that they're getting over there now, that I've always said we're going to be robbed of as soon as America can get hold of the 205 GTIs and the like. We won't see them for dust over here.
No, they'll all disappear into American auctions.
Bring a trailer. We're looking at you. So yeah, good time. Highly recommended.
Excellent. I'm glad to have you back.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to be back. I have missed you. I mean, the only other thing I've done is Festival of the Unexceptional. I think I phoned something in for that. That was quite good. Always good fun. 10 years this year. It was the standard just seems to get higher and higher. There were a few things sneaking in that shouldn't have been there. BMW M3s. There's a lot of sort of sideways glances at these, but most people saw it as the interloper that it was, and it was. It's again, it's very telling when you've got people regarding Maxes with joy and just looking at an M3 and going, oh, another one. Well, there we go. Hosting duties done. Comeback gates, all is forgiven. It's been lovely to talk to you all again. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time, but for now, from me, Dave, I wish you a good couple of weeks. See you soon.
From me, Jim, it's goodbye, and don't forget to check us out on all the socials. We are at UKMotorTalk everywhere.
And from me, Graham, take care, look after yourself, drive safely.
See you soon.
UK Motor Talk, a First Take Media production.